All right, interesting one here. Do you think Nvidia will be brave enough to go for an MSRP rise on the 4000 series upcoming? They have shown the insane pricing people are willing to pay. All they need to do is create their own supply shortage, like the gold and diamond industry do. So I'll just start by saying I don't think they can do that because they didn't create. I think a lot of people thought that AMD and Nvidia had created some sort of artificial supply shortage, whereas it's pretty self-evident now that they were cranking out as many as they possibly could. It's just that miners were snapping them up as fast as they could. The second that mining tap turned off, they've now just got boatloads of inventory that they're discounting and trying to get rid of, and they're worried about. So Nvidia can't do it, and AMD certainly aren't willing to go into cahoots with them and make that happen because they've got the Ryzen 7000 series. They want to claw back some sort of market share or gain some sort of market share. So Nvidia will have to be competitive on pricing within reason. And we've already seen that. Obviously, I think we were a little concerned about price creep and stuff like that, or very concerned about that months ago. And while it's still a concern, we've seen that they can't go stupid. So the RTX 3090 Ti at $2,000 US was the very definition of stupid. We said it at the time, but they were selling initially because miners or desperate gamers, probably more so desperate gamers, were snapping them up. And then as soon as the demand from cryptocurrency turned off and they'd been out for a little while, the prices came down very rapidly. It was very soon after launch that they started getting down. I think they're at least $500 US off now compared to where they were, which is still a dumb price. $1,500 US for 3090 Ti. I definitely don't do that right now. But I think given all that information, the 4000 series or the GeForce 40 series isn't going to be as bad as what people think. Now, famous last words, I could be very wrong on that one.
At least as bad as people thought it might be. I think with all these discussions, it's always important to remember the sort of the naming issues that tend to come up with these things. You know, it may be the case where a product like the 4070 is not a $500 card anymore and it's now a $600 card, which some people would say, oh, that's price creep because compare one number to the previous number and, you know, it's looking quite bad. But if the price to performance increase, which is really the only thing that matters for these discussions in terms of can they increase prices? If the price to performance goes up substantially, then the fact that that card is now $100 more expensive is offset by the fact that the performance is so much higher. So I think we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about, is NVIDIA going to raise prices? Because you know they might be able to get away with a $2,000 flagship GPU, which would be very expensive, and people are like, oh, that's so expensive. But if the more reasonable cards that people are buying are giving you substantially more performance per dollar that you're spending, then I would say that they haven't increased the price, even if tier-wise you compare them and it looks a bit more expensive. What would be bad is more of a Turing generation where the parts are either the same price, you get very little price to performance improvement,
which we suspect they won't be able to afford to do.
And I don't think they'll be able
7000 series.
Yes.
This should be in a lot of ways the most positive GPU generation that we've seen in quite some time because AMD should be highly competitive. They were very competitive with the 6000 series, but of course that didn't matter to gamers. So I really think this generation could be a good outcome for gamers. So we'll see. We'll see on that one.
I guess what I'm hoping for is that we don't see companies start limiting like the lowest end cards to $400. That would be bad. I think that would be class for calling it a sort of a price raise. But if these companies are still willing to produce $300, $200 GPUs at some point, then we could be in for quite
again,
a good
as we've said though, that really does come down to buyers at large. So if $400 is the entry level and people aren't willing to pay that and they're seeing a lot less GPU sales than what their forecast are expected to see, then prices will probably start to go down, which is what we saw with the 3090 Ti. So they're not really up for having boatloads of inventory and graphics cards sitting on shelves. They want them out the door. They'd very much like to see a continuation of 2020 and 2021, which is not going to happen. So they're going to try and do the best job possible.